Ladies and gentlemen, now it's too late with Alan Mosley.
Guys, welcome back for another episode of It's Too Late. I am your host, Alan Mosley, joined once again this week by the now number one producer in late night, it's Sherry Voluntary. Sherry, how are you doing?
I'm pretty great, actually.
You doing all right?
I'm doing all right.
Has everything thawed out there?
Yeah, we didn't get the winter wonderland that you guys got, so.
You bastard.
I know.
How dare you? Well, anyway, I wanted to mention so that we don't forget. First of all, guys, it's at the time of this recording, it's what's today? It's March 3rd, whatever the day is that we air this damn show. Yeah. But pretty soon it will be March 20th, which means you got to get your tickets to the It's Too Late 2021 live show. That's coming Saturday, March 20th. That's just over 2 weeks. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's not far at all.
Yeah,
you have to get tickets.
You have to get your tickets. It's going to be from 7 to 10, which that's kind of a lie. We're going to be there before that, and then at 9:59 we'll actually physically remove everyone from the premises. That's what's going to happen. But there's going to be a dessert bar, there's going to be live music, and of course camaraderie with all sorts of like-minded Liberty people, just like we had at episode 100. Guys, that's March 20th. At our studios just south of Nashville. Got to get your tickets. So you can go to facebook.com/AlanMosleyTV, click on events, or you can go to my website, which is Alan Mosley TV. Go click on the little event tab thing. It's going to take you to Eventbrite. Guys, bring it in, guys. You got to get your tickets because I've got so I've had a few more people buy their tickets, and I love the people that have. But we have way more people like in our new private community group talking to each other about their plans for the trip that don't have tickets. What this means is that these people are going to be like having a powwow out in the parking lot in front of the studio, visiting with one another, saying, "Oh, it's so great you came." And then they're all going to go to Waffle House and leave us at the studio.
Or they're going to try to come in later than when we shut everything down to start recording and wonder why they can't get in.
Ooh, that's a very good point. We're trying to record in front of a live studio audience and all that. And honestly, guys, it's the party space that we have for seating and stuff is not that big. So we got to close up the doors. It's kind of like if you go to see like a live play or whatever, like the ushers don't just have people running up and down the aisles in the middle of the show, right? Yeah. So when it comes time to start the show, like we'll open the doors at 6 or something. Come 7 o'clock, we're locking those doors because we got to tape the show. There's not going to be. So that's why you got to get your tickets ahead of time. Honestly, I don't even think we're going to operate a door, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no,
I think you. Yeah.
Get your tickets so we know who to give the information that you will need to. As well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then another thing that I don't want to forget is there was a handful of birthdays this week of some of obviously because they're fans of this show, some of just the best and brightest individuals. Thanks for ruining the illusion of appreciation and goodwill that I tried to establish here. But anyway, so our resident pun master, Andrew Avery's birthday was this week. And I already wished Andrew a happy birthday, but there was one that actually I let slip. So a former guest on this show, Clay Davis.
Oh.
His birthday was this past week. I think he turned the big 3-0. So we wish Clay Davis a happy birthday. And so I told Clay, since I forgot his birthday, we're going to do a whole segment on the show as an homage to Clay. Oh, so Clay had posted the shopping cart theory on his Facebook. Now, some of you guys might be aware of this. We'll go through this. The shopping cart theory is kind of like a test for self-governance in a free society based on if people would return their shopping carts. So I'm going to read this for you. The shopping cart is the ultimate litmus test for whether a person is capable of self-governing. To return the shopping cart is an easy, convenient task and one which we all recognize as the correct, appropriate thing to do. I do want to say really quick, the fact that it's not super convenient is why some people don't do it. That's the only problem I have with that statement. There are no situations other than dire emergencies in which a person is not able to return their cart. Simultaneously, it is not illegal to abandon your shopping cart. Therefore, the shopping cart presents itself as the apex example of whether a person will do what is right without being forced to do it. No one will punish you for not returning the shopping cart. No one will fine you or kill you for not returning the shopping cart. You gain nothing, however, by returning the shopping cart. You must return the shopping cart out of the goodness of your own heart. You must return the shopping cart because it is the right thing to do, because it is correct. A person who is unable to do this is no better than an animal, an absolute savage who can only be made. I know, it got really dark.
Judgy.
Yeah, I know. Who can only be made to do what is right by threatening them with a law and the force that stands behind it. The shopping cart is what determines whether a good person, or if a person is a good or bad member of society. So,
Hmm.
so I will admit, I got a little bit heavy there at the end. But I figured we'll spend the rest of the monologue kind of talking about this for a minute or two before we take our first break. So I get what it's trying to say is that it's just better on every, like physically, what is the shopping cart? So you got to have your shopping cart to push your groceries around. The company can have, Publix can have cart attendants, which they do, to collect carts, because a lot of people won't do this, as a matter of fact. But I would even make the stipulation of, like, you can eat, like, we're okay with you just taking the shopping cart to the little cart receptacles out in the parking lot. You don't even have to bring it all the way back to the door, because some people won't even do that.
Right.
Some people will, like, how they do, they'll just prop it up on the grass next to where they're parked, or just leave it in a parking space. So if you've ever been trying to park and there was a cart blocking a parking space you wanted, then you were negatively affected by someone not doing the shopping cart theory. If you've ever been at a store and they were running low on carts or buggies or whatever, or you were having to wait, someone else is coming up and you're having to take theirs, then you were negatively affected by the carts not being returned. One could even go so far as to say, if the company has to hire lot attendants and that drives up their overhead,
right,
then if you pay even a penny more for anything because they have to hire lot attendants, then it's like the tragedy, right? That everyone has been adversely affected because some people won't return the carts. So let me pose you this though, Sherry.
Okay.
I'm gonna turn this over to you, because I know that's just what you want. It's to deal with a deep philosophical question right before a commercial break.
Of course.
But what should we do with the people who can't return their carts?
Is flogging them publicly okay?
I guess it depends on what your HOA says.
Where do we build these walls? Yeah, I for one, I think, most of the time that goes off to the baggers. Like, the people who just used to be bagging your groceries have a lot more responsibility now, and that's part of their responsibility. But two, if you think about it, that out of all the people that say shop at Kroger every day, most of those carts end up going back. And when I was young, they didn't have the little cart corrals out in the parking lot that you had to put your buggy. You had to take it back to the store or leave it in the parking lot. And my mom always made us take it back to the store. We would, like, push it in the door, and go off. You wouldn't, like, necessarily put it all the way back, but so this is their response to trying to make it more convenient for people. And some people still won't do it.
Well, so it goes to show, and the only reason I put you on the spot there, by the way, is it just goes to show that, because really there's two different kind of aspects to this. One, there's the literal return the cart, let's evaluate who is and isn't returning the cart. This is a test on whether or not they would be a good neighbor. They'd be a good addition to your community. So so up front there's the evaluation, but then there's kind of the seedy underbelly to that question, which is, okay, now we've identified some people that aren't.
Right.
Now what? Because of course, as the exercise says, that as the world is now, nothing's going to happen to those people for abandoning their carts. But it kind of, I don't want to get, like, too deep in, like, the monologue here, but it does go to show that you want to associate with people that are like-minded, that share your values and your principles, and you want to have a
Right.
community of those people. And we believe in people being able to establish said communities. We believe in free travel.
Mm-hmm.
We don't believe in imaginary borders like states like to impose.
Right.
But we do believe in people associating with one another or choosing not to associate with one another.
Right.
And so there is kind of a question there for the anarchists out there to say, well, but how will we make it happen?
Mm-hmm.
Because any type of enforcement of any type of rule will always come under scrutiny of, are we just a one-way train right back to where we
Right.
were, with some governing body, oppressing some
Right.
group of people?
You know how Aldi does it. You have to
Mm-hmm.
put your little quarter in their cart to get a cart,
Oh,
and to get your quarter back, you have to put it back. I mean, that's
so
an
that
incentive, right?
so you're being taxed for your transgression if you.
Just temporary, like you get that money back. It's just they're
Mhm.
holding it in trust for you in the cart until you put it back and you get your quarter.
Yeah. Now that's interesting. What's funny too is that there's some people who, like, if there's kind of a stripped down business that they don't offer a lot of amenities, they do that because that's overhead. And so,
Yes.
a wholesale type place might be able to offer rock bottom prices, but it's generic brand stuff. It's not the newest threads. It's, they don't have a bunch of
Right.
people waiting on you hand and foot. And so, but more choices is good though,
Right.
right? Like, we believe more options is good. If you want to be waited on hand and foot, I actually heard some people, because far be it from me, I know that we have a guest this evening, and so we're pressed for time again. So naturally, I'm going to go on another rant. So I actually heard some people talking recently about the practice of tipping in America and how it's
Uh-huh.
different in different places, and that, those greedy capitalists in the States, they don't
Right.
pay people what they're worth. And so you really got to tip them, because if you don't tip them, then they'll just
They
starve.
go hungry.
And I don't want to get too deep in all that, but just simply to say though that, again, there are those people that think, well, I don't tip at McDonald's, ergo, I'm not going to tip at the fancy steakhouse for $100 dinners. And there's some people, that's just how they feel.
Right.
And of course, obviously, if you're their waiter, you hate them with every fiber of your being.
Right.
But the point being is that if you were to try to explain to them without just knocking their teeth out for being jerk offs,
Right.
you're trying to explain to them, well, again, we like having choices. And one choice for dinner is McDonald's, where you're going to get some cheap burger and fries,
Right.
and there's not going to be, I mean, heck, once they get done fighting for 15, you're not going to have anyone waiting
Right.
on you, much less at your table. You're just
The
going to go
robot.
order the robot's going to take your order, and you're going to pick up your tray, and you're done.
Yeah.
But you expect a certain level of, we'll say, affordability, because I'm being nice,
Yeah.
in exchange for, you're not going to get a lot of that hand and foot waiting.
Yeah.
Vice versa, you absolutely expect at the fine dining establishment, boy, if you even so much as bend over to tie your shoe, when you come back, your drink is full.
Yes.
Right there, just Johnny on the spot.
Right.
But you expect that because of what you're paying, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a quid pro quo, that on the one hand, they're kind of expecting you to tip because that's sort of a customary.
Right.
But vice versa, you're expecting them to offer great service in exchange for the prices you're paying at that place. So there's nothing wrong with that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But we are absolutely surrounded by people who maybe don't share our opinions
Yeah.
on these aforementioned subjects we just said.
They're thoughtless.
And the answer for those people is to visit euthanasia.com to get the
Yay!
information they need to make the right choice for them.
I visited and I got the information that was right for me.
Well, I'm glad the information that was right for you was to stick around for more and more episode. Guys, we will be right back with the meme of the week in the viewer mail right after this. Don't go away. Hey, Sherry,
Yes.
what time is it?
Meme of the week.
Remember these? There's man coin and bird coin, but they're the same coin. They just put them on the other side. Why would they do that? We are living in hell.
Don't they know birds aren't real?
I just want you to know, by the way, this has nothing to do with anything. I laughed. I didn't type in LOL and text you. I
Right.
actually laughed out loud like a madman.
You are a madman, Alan Mosley.
There's something about the dire exasperation of the last two lines. It just tickled me. So I've been tickled, ladies and gentlemen, and that's the meme you got. I guess we better answer some viewer mail.
Let's do it.
It's so intense. Ketchup smoothies. Viewer mail. Just by the way, I did ask Walter Block a food question.
Yay! I live for those food questions. I'm not even kidding you.
You're gonna have to wait until the very end of the interview for the food questions. There you go. Clay Davis writes, see, Clay, I feel like Clay shouldn't get a question if we dedicated the whole monologue to Clay.
It's his birthday present.
All right. Dear Alan and Sherry, what was your best, most memorable live music experience? Sherry, what was your most memorable live music experience?
Well, my dad was a musician, but I'm going to go with seeing Judas Priest in 1992 because
my dad was a musician, but I'm going to go with not him.
I mean, actually, my family, growing up, we always had music at holidays. Like everybody would bring their guitars and we would, after meals, we'd sing and tell stories. You know, it was like hee haw. You ever saw hee haw? That it was sort of like that. And that's probably my best live music experience. I really miss those times.
For the millennials and the Zoomer out there, Hee Haw was a show where the Boogaloo Boys would get on TV and talk about the good times coming.
With so banjos.
There you go. Yeah. Lyle Durio asks, Dear Alan and Sherry, since you answered my last... So he answered another question. I already answered it. Here's another. Do you wear only 2 masks or 3? So Lyle, I'm actually going to give you a serious answer to your question. I have gone this entire just nightmare last 12 months having not worn a single mask a single time in my life. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. It hasn't been easy.
So virtuous.
I'm a real libertarian, guys. I'm a real libertarian. If you wore a mask a single time for any reason, even if you were sick, you're actually Pol Pot. So there you go.
Where do I learn Vietnamese?
Yeah. Andrew Avery writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, not a pun, but what has been the effect of mask mandates on the ventriloquism industry? You sure that wasn't supposed to be a pun? I feel, or he's genuinely concerned about who's that one ventriloquist who's like still famous. He has like the terrorist guy and the old man.
Oh yeah, on a stick. The guy that does the on a stick jalapeno guy and the little I forget his name. Rodney? No, that's Rodney American. He does
whoever it is. It's awful, and if you like that, you're literally Pol Pot.
Oh, there's worse ones than him.
Rachel Watson Kennerly asked, Dear Alan and Sherry, is it too late for me to submit a question? Yeah.
That would be yes. And no.
Yeah. Andrew Avery, do pilots appreciate the gravity of removing white privilege from mathematics? Okay. So for people at home that are like, what the hell happened to this show? So besides being literally Hitler, Andrew makes puns. And what he's talking about, and this actually is a reference to a real thing, there was this educational foundation that, by the way, was being bankrolled by Bill Gates, just throwing that out there, that they were promoting these materials saying that the practice for looking for a correct answer, like an objectively proven integer in mathematics, that's a relic of white supremacy.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So this isn't even a joke. This is actually a
Right.
real thing that's happening in the world right now.
Yeah. Yay
Yeah.
us.
But you know what the thing is, though, is that I never, like, math was always my least favorite subject. So that just goes to show how I was woke before way before all the rest of you guys.
So advanced.
Thank you. Adam Sakosan writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, if you were magically appointed king or queen, would you fix some things or immediately return the power to the people? Now, I'll answer. I'll let Sherry answer this. I'm going to answer up front. I've been pretty clear on the show before that the reason you don't want to be like writing me in, because if I by some crazy chance got elected, like,
Right.
just it's going to take a while to clean the walls is all I got to say. I mean, we're going to be living in Allenville one way or another.
Allentown, like that Billy Joel song.
You know how we've even said this on the show before, like, you know, if we've spent X number of years or decades living under bad policies or whatever, that, you know, it's not that it would take literally a 1-for-1, but it might take some time to reverse those policies.
Right.
I would reverse them on day one in so much as I would institute my policies. So you're going to give the power right back to the people, aren't you, Sherry?
Well, I am the people's governor, as you know.
Well, the government is us, and we are the government.
Well, I mean, I came in third place for governor of Tennessee in 2016, elected by the actual people. So, and I've not used any of my power so far.
So you weren't elected, is what you're saying.
I'm saying the real people elected me.
I like how you finished third, because you finishing third makes you as much the governor as the LP being the third biggest political party.
Exactly.
It kind of worked out that way.
People's governor.
You're something. You're something. Jonathan Carranza writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, what is Tennessee's state gun? Ha ha ha. So I looked this up right before we do have a state gun.
Yes.
It used to be some other ancient historical relic, which was probably the more appropriate answer. I'm actually gonna pull this up. We have a state gun, guys. It's the Barrett M82 sniper rifle. Is the official state rifle. You know what's great, by the way, is that a lot of states do have a state gun, and a lot of them are some sort of historical reference to their area, like Pennsylvania
muzzle loader.
Yeah, like Pennsylvania's is like the Pennsylvania long rifle is their state gun. Ours is the Barrett M82. So Barrett is so those weapons are manufactured in Christiana, which is right outside of Murfreesboro, here in Tennessee. So that's why, by the way, it's not like they just picked that one. It's right. Barretts are made here, and so that's why it's Tennessee's official state rifle.
So hot.
Yeah, I know, right? So a funny little tidbit. There was a single senator that voted against the measure to change the Tennessee state gun to the Barrett, and it was a Senator Jeff Yarbrough, a Democrat from Nashville. And now I know what you might be thinking. Well, he's a Democrat, he's anti-gun, that's why he did it. It's actually not true. So his reason is that he was concerned about the idea of having the state endorse a specific product from a private company. And that actually makes a lot of sense.
It makes more sense than normal.
So there you go.
There you go.
So Jonathan, we won't be derailed by your joke questions because we got joke answers in the state of Tennessee. And finally, we only got last couple ones. Last one. Kim Brown writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, if you could choose a ship to live on, would it be Voyager, Enterprise, or Deep Space Nine?
Oh my God. Oh, this one's a tough one. Okay, this answer might surprise you, but I'm going to go with DS9 because they have a bar.
Well, actually, that doesn't surprise me because the correct answer is Deep Space Nine.
I mean, she didn't ask what the best show was because that's not the correct answer for what the best Trek is.
Well,
But
actually, it is. Deep Space
no,
Nine is the correct. That is the correct
incorrect.
answer. No, I'm the one that actually produces. I'm going to mute you. Is what I'm getting at. Um, so the correct answer is Deep Space Nine. No, when you said I'd be sir, I thought you were going to say Voyager.
Oh God,
That's what
no.
I was.
Neelix would
What's
be
the?
going out an airlock. I can tell you that.
I was literally just about to ask you, what's that one gay character nobody likes?
Yeah.
And you already said Neelix before I could even ask the question.
I mean, that's why we're friends.
Neelix. So I did think about quarks as being one, like we're going to put that on the brochure of why you should go to Deep Space Nine. I actually also would pick Deep Space Nine because it's the only actual destination, whereas the other ones you could wind up in Borg space.
Yeah.
If you go
Like Voyager.
on one of the other ones,
Yeah.
or you stay on Deep Space Nine, where only the occasional hijink happens.
Right. And yeah.
Boy, I tell you what, Walter is going to watch the front end of this show to check out his interview, and he's going to be like, "What the hell did I do?" This wasn't like this when I was on the show before. And he's right.
Too late now, Professor Block.
It's too late. That's the whole point. Yay. Guys, we will be right back with Professor Walter Block right after this break. Don't go away. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for It's Too Late with Alan Mosley. Email us at info@alanmosley.tv. Guys, welcome back to the program. We are joined again today for the second time on this show by the professor of libertarianism himself, Professor Loyola. I'm glad you smiled at that. And someone, by the way, who has more academic articles than all the rest of us combined. It's Walter Block. Walter, how are you doing?
Good to be with you again. My pleasure.
Well, I got to tell you, Walter, when you were last on the show and we talked about no such thing as a market failing, and that if Facebook went awry, the Schnoopelnet, as you put it, would come along and Schmoopelbook would replace Facebook. That was one of our most watched and listened episodes. So before we do anything, I got to thank you for Schmoopelbook and all the views.
You're very kind. Thanks. My pleasure.
Well, a topic that we've talked about on the program just in the last couple of weeks is the proposal of a $15 federal minimum wage. And it's one of those things where bad ideas never seem to go away, right? Like that's one of the beautiful tragedies of politics, that a bad idea that doesn't make it can always be reintroduced with each passing generation. So before we get into necessarily a debate about multiple bad options and which one is the least bad, give us a little bit of just a bird's eye overview for the layman of what's so wrong with raising the minimum wage. I mean, it hasn't been risen in years, right? And everyone's just poor and starving.
Well, it's not so bad to raise it. The problem is that it exists in the first place. We shouldn't have any minimum wage. See, a lot of people think that minimum wage is sort of like a floor under wages, and the higher it is, the higher wages are, and minimum wage law raises wages. No, it doesn't raise wages. It's an unemployment law. It's not an employment law, and it's not a raise wage law. What it says is that if you get a job, then you have to be paid $15 an hour. But suppose you're only worth $10 an hour. Suppose you're, what I mean by worth 10 an hour is that when you're on the shop floor or in the factory or behind the counter, your employer's receipts go up by $10 an hour. Mm-hmm. So he's happy to have you, and he'll be richer by $10 an hour. But he's got to pay you 15. He's not going to hire you. You're not going to get any job. Minimum wage is not like a floor undergirding wages and raising wages the higher it is. I mean, if it were, why stop at 15? Why not go to 150 an hour or 1,500 an hour? I mean, we'd be rich. We could stop all foreign aid, just tell these poor countries, hey, look, you're poor, fine. Go raise your minimum wage. Make it $10,000 an hour. You'll be rich. I mean, this is crackpot economics. This is nonsense. If you want a physical simile, metaphor, don't use a floor. Use a hurdle or a high jump bar. Do
Mhm.
you know what the world's record is in the high jump? Something like 8'2". People can actually jump over a bar that's 8'2". Well, now you have to jump over 15 an hour. Now, most people can jump over 15 an hour, but unskilled workers, uh, workers who are discriminated against, say young ones or black employees, uh, they have a hard time jumping over 15 an hour. Uh, I know somebody who's a little mentally handicapped, and his productivity is worth, oh, I don't know, $5 an hour. He can't get a job.
Mhm.
Even at 7.25, he can't get a job. So the problem is not so much raising it or not raising it. The problem is it exists in the first place. Look, what determines wages is not employer generosity. The reason LeBron James makes a lot of money is not because his employer is very generous. Says, "Oh, LeBron, we love you. We'll give you a lot of money." The reason I get a middle class income is not because they love me and say, "Well, we'll give you a middle class income." And the reason that a guy who pushes a broom or asks if you want fries with that gets that low salary is not because the employer is a cheapskate. It
Mhm.
all depends upon productivity. Productivity is the way to raise wages. And if you want to get your productivity increased, you should get a job, because a lot of productivity at that low level is showing up on time, being reliable, not fighting with the boss, not fighting with the customers. And if you can do that, you can be worth 15, 20 an hour. But you have to get that first job. And suppose you're a black teenager. And by the way, the unemployment rate of blacks is double the unemployment rate of whites. The unemployment rate of teenagers is double the unemployment rate of adults. The unemployment rate of black teenagers is quadruple the
Mhm.
rate of middle-aged white people. So they have a hard time getting that first job. Uh, suppose some black kid wants to get a job and nobody wants to hire him. What he should do is go over to the employer and say, "Look, I know you don't trust me. Yak, yak, yak. You're prejudiced. Who cares? I'll work for you for nothing for a day. Give me a chance. It
Yeah.
can't hurt you. And if you like what I do in the day, well, then you can offer me a job for the next day." But that would be illegal.
Yeah.
And the black kid could go to jail for that. Probably wouldn't, because the powers that be would regard him as an exploited worker. But the employer who took him up on that, he could go to jail.
Mhm.
Look, I right now offer you, come wash my car. I'll give you $3 an hour. Now, if I was serious, I could go to jail for that. Can you
Yeah.
imagine going to jail for making an offer? Now, look, you're not going to come work for me for $3 an hour. It's silly. But I've now opened your horizons. I've opened your options. I haven't hurt you.
Yeah.
Look, here I have a pen. I'm now going to offer you this pen for $1 million. You want to buy it? What? You don't want to buy a pen for $1 million, you rotten kid? Well, have I hurt you? Uh, no, I've just offered you another option. It's true, it's a silly option, but I've offered you an option. But it's the same sort of a thing when I offered you the option of working for me for $3 an hour. There are some people whose productivity is $3 an hour, and without a minimum wage, they could get a job, and then maybe they could get up to $4 an hour, and then up to $5 an hour, and maybe up to $6 an hour, because they now have experience. But it's the minimum wage is sort of like cutting off the lowest rungs of the ladder. In
Mhm.
order to get into the employment ladder, you now have to be 15 an hour, which is, a serious amount of productivity. So what about the people who, as I said before, what about the people whose productivity is 10 or 12? They will not get a job. Do we want
Mhm.
a situation where if your productivity is 10 or $12 an hour, no one wants to hire you? What's the benefit of that?
Well, something that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, there was this awesome article on Fee that talked about effective minimum wage in different places. So while we wouldn't approve of, say, the state of California or the city of Seattle having a particular minimum wage, that's not as bad as a federal minimum wage, because I mean, does anyone honestly look in the mirror and say, well, I'm sure that the economy in DC is exactly the same in Arkansas?
No, you're right. A minimum wage will do more harm in certain places than in other places, but it will do harm everywhere,
Mhm.
because everywhere there are unskilled workers. And, these are the poorest people. These are the people that we should really consider. I mean, good public policy Yes, it has to worry about the rich because if you screw them up, they become middle class. And yes, we have to worry about the middle class too because if you screw them up, they become poor. But if you mess around with the poor who are already poor and you screw around with them, well, then they're in very dire circumstances. Why pick on the weakest people?
Yeah.
It's just horrendous.
Well, so speaking of that, talking about kind of the most vulnerable, most disenfranchised people. Now, a lot of people who are proponents of a minimum wage, which, by the way, there's a lot of people that support a minimum wage that won't affect them. Like they're not making minimum wage, so it's not necessarily self-serving. They're bleeding heart tights that they see people who are not as well off as themselves, and they think to them, well, I want to help those people. I want those people to have a better lot in life. I want the inequality between where they are on the economic ladder and where I am to be closed. Now that might be virtuous good intent. But I not only do I suspect that you don't see it that way necessarily, but also I want to talk a little bit about something I believe you mentioned recently, which is if you want to help people, then just help them.
Well, if you want to help people, leave them alone. There's too much helping going on. The thesis that you offer that the rich people want to help the poor people, that's one plausible hypothesis, and I'm sure it applies to some people, and those
Mm-hmm.
people are economically illiterate. But
Mm-hmm.
then there's a more nefarious purpose or function of the minimum wage, and that is racism. I mean, in South Africa, apartheid South Africa, the black people were getting jobs that the white people didn't want them to get.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to unemploy them, they boosted their minimum wage so it didn't pay to hire black people. A similar thing occurred when Massachusetts wanted to have a minimum wage in the 30s. It was because black workers in the South were undercutting them. And one way to obviate the competition is to price them out of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Look, suppose I hate you. And I say, well, no one should hire Alan unless you give him $1 million a month.
I like where this is going. Go ahead.
No, 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 no. No one's going to hire you at 12 million a year. I'm assuming that your productivity is not 12 million a year. And if it is, I'll make it 120. Am I helping you by saying nobody should hire you unless they pay you $1 million a month? The people in Massachusetts purposely wanted to have a minimum wage in order to obviate the competition from black people in the South. Those people were vicious and evil,
Mm-hmm.
but at least they were good economists. Whereas the modern people like Bernie Sanders, I think he's a good guy. I went to high school with him. I was sort of his buddy. I really think he is well intentioned. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think he's trying to unemploy unskilled black kids. I think he really thinks he's going to help them. So he's just economically ignorant. Those other people are economically sophisticated and vicious.
Yeah.
So either motivation accounts for, I think, 99.9% of the support for the minimum wage law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, something that I want to kind of broach because Walter, if there's something that you're particularly well known for, and we love you for it, by the way, is being willing to discuss or debate two different bad options, right? Like it's being willing to say that, well, look, as a libertarian, I may be opposed to all these different options, but as a realist, I can say, but I'm only presented with two bad options. And I know you've made the analogy before that, well, if I have to be a slave and I have a master that's going to beat me once a day versus a master that would beat me once a week, it's just factual to prefer the master that would only beat me once a week because it's a terrible option, but it's a better option. So what do you say to people that would say, well, if the two options presented were we were going to raise a federal minimum wage to $10, $15, $20 an hour, or we were going to have something akin to a UBI where everyone or people making under a certain amount of money would be guaranteed, we would turn on the printing presses and we would just cut checks to those people to counterbalance the economic inequality. Now, I think it goes without saying to our audience, those are both terrible ideas. But if you had to choose between the ideas, which ones would you choose?
Well, I'm going to wiggle out of it, and I'm going to wiggle out
No.
this way. Yes, wiggle. I'm good at wiggling. Watch me wiggle. See, I'm wiggling. It all depends upon the level.
Mm-hmm.
If you have UBI at $1 a year,
Mm-hmm.
not so bad. What the heck? $1 a year.
Sure.
Not, I mean, it's still bad. It sets precedents. It might be raised. It's very bad.
Hmm.
On the other hand, if you had a minimum wage of a penny an hour,
Yeah.
that you had to be paid a penny an hour,
Hmm.
that wouldn't be so bad either. I mean, it's not good. I don't favor it. Suppose somebody's only worth a half a penny an hour, and it sets up a very bad precedent.
Sure.
So it really depends upon what level it's set. You really can't say this is my way of wiggling.
Hmm.
You can't say, um, well, which is worse. It depends upon. I mean, if you make it 100,000 a year UBI, that's very bad. And if you make it 25 an hour minimum wage law, it's very bad. It's sort of like saying, well, which is worse, zoning or rent control?
Sure.
Or which is worse, tariffs or regulation on stocks or something? I mean, it's really hard to answer that. Each one is worse than the other, is one possibility.
Hmm.
And the other, the way I'm wiggling out of this is it depends upon what the level you set it at.
Hmm.
Should we have an income tax? Okay, let's have an income tax of 0.0001%. By the way they started the income tax was 1%. Everyone said, well, not so bad. And then it crept up.
Sure.
But assuming that it's not going to creep up, an income tax of 1%, I would prefer than, say, minimum wage of 20 an hour.
Hmm.
On the other hand, an income tax of 50% is worse than a minimum wage of 5 cents an hour. So I hate to wiggle, but what you're really asking is, I have two children. You might as well say, well, which one do you love more? I don't like those kind of questions.
Well, I think if I'm going to play devil's advocate, we can try to nail down the numbers of. I feel like a lot of people who specifically like, well, why did they say 15? I feel like a lot of people are saying 15 because just to do some rough math, they're thinking, well, if you work 40 hours a week and you work 50 weeks a year and you're making $15, we want people, say, to make $30,000 a year. That's what's going to be our new base poverty level, is $30,000 a year. And then let's say, the proponents of UBI were saying, well, we can have UBI and we can just turn on the printing press and cut people checks and make sure that they're making $30,000 a year. Now, I know that there's a lot of questions, not only oppressive, there's questions of economic incentive in there, of if you could get a check to get you up to 30,000, you would work less thinking you would still get a check to get to 30,000. But and I don't want to gloss over those questions, but I feel like some people would say the minimum wage is particularly harmful. So for not only is it harmful to the prospective employee for the reasons you've documented, but it's also harmful to the prospective, small business and mom and pop type employer, that they are just not capable of, but you're passing the buck to them, right? Like, we want people to make more money, so we're going to make you pay for it, as opposed to the government cut them a check. Now, I know the government has no money and we're all going to pay for it in the end, but but I want to put a little bit of a spotlight on the particular small business person and sort of that concept of, well, Amazon already pays their employees $15 an hour, and good on them for voluntarily doing it. But I know a lot of corner markets owned by locals that don't pay $15 an hour, and if you told them they had to, they'd be closing tomorrow.
I don't think so. I think that the minimum wage law is much more of a vicious attack on unskilled workers than it is on mom and pop restaurants or grocery stores. I think that what will happen with the mom and pop restaurants is they'll go to self-serve. Namely, they'll stop with the waitress and they'll say, you have to clean your own table,
Hmm.
and you come over to the counter and you order, and we're not having any waitresses because you have to pay the waitress too much. And instead of three dishwashers with a mediocre dishwashing machine, we're going to have one dishwasher with a much better dishwashing machine. It's sort of like when they raised the minimum wage law from 40 to 75 cents in the 30s. Before that, you go into an elevator and there's a guy standing there. He's not a pervert. He's the elevator operator. We had manually operated elevators.
Hmm.
Well, then what happened with mom and pop high rises or low rises, 6-story buildings or whatever? Uh, they just fired him and put in automatic elevators. It didn't really hurt. It hurt them a little bit. I don't deny that, but I don't think the main impetus, harmful impetus, is on the mom and pop supermarket, the mom and pop restaurant, the mom and pop whatever.
Hmm.
I think what they'll just do is get out of the suddenly more expensive factory production and into cheaper, relatively cheaper ones. Look, I'm now building rowboats, and I can build them out of plastic, out of metal, or out of wood. And all of a sudden, the government taxes plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Plastic is evil. Well, make rowboats out of wood or metal. It'll hurt me a little bit because if I were making wooden rowboats before, now I can't make them, so it precludes me a little bit. So yes, it'll hurt them a little bit, and all too many people focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the main negative impetus of the minimum wage is not so much on the employer; it's on the employee who never gets a job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with regard to this, you're a vicious fellow. I don't like you trying to push me around. You bully you, namely a minimum wage law that'll create 30,000 a year for those who still have a job
Mm-hmm.
versus 30,000 we just give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know how to answer that question. It's sort of, which would I rather be done? Be punched in the nose or have my knee whacked by a baseball bat? Well, it depends on how hard it was. And if it hurt the same amount, well, I don't know. I guess I need my knee more than my nose. I'm not sure about that. This is an empirical issue. And I don't see the benefit of the question. Namely, they're both evil,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the important thing is to demonstrate to your audience that they're both evil and vicious and nasty, and not so much which is worse. Which is worse, a tariff of 15% or more EPA regulations?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
Well, I think.
and I never think about those questions, so I'm a poor person to ask about that.
Well, I think that a lot of people, not to sound too pessimistic, but I think a lot of people say that it seems inevitable. It seems like it's hard to tailor public opinion against something that is so well received. It kind of falls into the same category of, well, if we name our bill COVID relief, and a lot of people really want economic stimulus because the lockdowns have been bad. Then, of course, you can then turn around and stuff all manners of government spending into that bill that you normally wouldn't be able to pass individually, but you can pass under the guise of COVID relief. I feel like a lot of people would say it just seems like the dam is going to break and there's nothing I can do about it, because you're just going to have an increasing number of people who they feel they feel like they're undervalued, underappreciated. They want more money for the economically challenged. They see inflation and they feel like their spending power is going down, and they feel like, well, I can't do anything about inflation, but I can vote for people that are going to pass a higher minimum wage. And so there's like a certain inevitability to it. I mean, do you feel like that's a reasonable view to have? That, well, it seems like they're going to continue to propose these things until they get their way?
I'm going to shoot you either in the right leg or in the left leg. Which one do you want me to shoot you in?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get that, but they're gonna continue loading the gun, though. I mean, it's
okay. So we have to argue against shooting people in the leg. Whether it's the right leg or the left leg really doesn't matter.
Well,
I mean, if you said you're going to amputate my left arm and my right arm, well, I'm a righty, so I'd probably rather keep my right. But when it comes to feet, I'm not right-footed or left-footed. I mean, in soccer, some people are right-footed and some people are left-footed, but I don't play soccer. I just walk around. So I'm indifferent between my right leg and my left leg. I don't want you to shoot either of my legs.
mm-hmm.
But to go into detail about which leg would I rather have shot, or which arm would I rather lose, or you're going to cut off one of my ears, which ear you're going to cut off,
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather discuss, well, it's not good to cut off people's ears. It's not good to shoot people in the leg. Not good to amputate their arms against their will. Now, if they have cancer and you got to remove an arm, okay. But, which leg would you rather have the cancer in? I think it's a question I'm not really comfortable with, and I appreciate where you're coming from, but I regard you as a bully, a talented one. I mean, you did a good job in trying to get me to answer the question, but I'm trying to wiggle out of this for reasons I've given.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand completely, and again, I mean, our audience is going to be opposed to any type of economic measures such as that. I think where a lot of people, again, I feel like a lot of people's concern is that, well, If I decide to run for office and the first speech I give is I oppose my opponent who wants to raise the minimum wage because I think it should be 0, I've lost the election. It's over. I've lost the election. So how do you deal with that politically then?
Well, that's roughly what the Libertarian Party stands for. I mean, any libertarian who said that he favors a raise, they're now Republican guys. I think what's his name from Arkansas,
Mm-hmm.
Tom Cotton, and
Yes.
also Mitt Romney said,
Yes.
"Well, let's raise the minimum wage law to 10."
Mm-hmm.
Well, 10 is better than 15. It unemploys fewer people, but the Libertarian Party, I think, would say let's not have minimum wage at all, and if we get our usual 1 or 2% of the votes, so be it, because we're trying to educate people.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if you say, well, I'm against welfare, you'd lose the vote also. It's our
Mm-hmm.
job to what did they say? Win the hearts and minds of the people.
Yeah.
And the way we win the hearts and minds of the people, I don't think, is by distinguishing between welfare and UBI,
Mm-hmm.
which is a form of welfare, on the one hand, and minimum wage on the other. I think we win the hearts and minds of the people by saying that both are wrong. So I've spent a lot of time on why minimum wage is wrong. Let me just talk a minute or two about UBI.
Okay.
UBI is wrong because you take money from the rich and you give it to the poor. What's wrong with that? Well, the rich start to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Bjorn Borg, a famous tennis player of a previous generation, was faced with 110% marginal income tax.
Mm-hmm.
Namely, if he makes an extra million, they'll charge him $1.1 million.
Yeah.
So he's minus 100,000. So he left Sweden. He went to Monaco.
Yeah.
Gerard Depardieu, a French actor, famous actor, a good actor. France had a very high marginal tax rate in order to help welfare. He went to Russia. So rich people will start leaving. They're leaving New York City, New York State in droves and going to Florida because Florida has lower
Mm-hmm.
taxes. They're leaving California and going to Texas or Arkansas for similar Arizona, I meant. For similar reasons. So one problem with that is you try to pluck the golden goose and the golden goose runs away. The second problem is the poor. I'm going to give you money if you're poor. And if you get a good job, and I'm not going to give you the money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're now have an incentive to stay poor and not to work hard. Well, that's not cool.
Yeah.
So these are, and then there's another reason. The black family, they say that if you put a frog in boiling water, its metabolism is such that it jumps right out.
Yeah.
But if you put the frog in cold water and you heat it up slowly, the frog sits there and gets boiled. Well, slavery was like boiling water for the black family. Of course, it disrupted the black family during slavery because the mother was sold here, the father was sold there. But in the aftermath of slavery, the black family was strong enough to coalesce. I did research in 1900 and 1910, and the rate of family formation of both was about the same. In the 1870s and 1880s, there were ads in the paper. Mary, where are you? This is Joe, your husband. Let's get together.
Mm-hmm.
And they got together. However, LBJ in 1965, with his Great Society, started shoving money down the pregnant girl's throat, giving her more money in welfare and UBI and all than the father of her child could give her. And there was no man in the house. And 3/4 of black kids are now brought up without two parents. And it's not just a black thing; it's a white thing also. In Sweden, they did that, and they ruined the family there. Before 1965, the white family, it was very rare that kids were brought up without two parent household. Now it's, I think, 1/3 of white kids. The only reason the black people were more vulnerable is they were poorer, so they're more vulnerable to a given amount of money stuffed down their throat. So this ruined the black family and the white family, and we know that a father in the house is very important. Kids who are brought up without a father are more likely to be criminals, more likely to commit suicide, more likely to be unemployed. Yak 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 yak. So what I'm trying to do now, we spent the first half of this why the minimum wage law is no good. Well, now I'm trying to say that the other isn't so good either. Actually, the other is very bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, there was some black conservative who wrote a book, "White Liberals Leave Us Alone," or "Stop Trying to Help Us."
Yeah.
Well, these are two. Do you know the author of that? I
Well,
forget.
are you thinking about Black Rednecks, White Liberals by Thomas Sowell? Or
Somebody else, but Thomas
yeah.
Sowell is certainly one of those Oreo cookies. He's not really authentically black because all black's supposed to be socialist,
Mm-hmm.
and he's obviously not a socialist. So even though he looks black, he's not really black. And Clarence Thomas and a whole bunch of black, very good black conservatives and libertarians. So both of these programs are very bad, very harmful. And you're right. The electorate is such that if you announce you're against welfare and or you're against the minimum wage, you're losing.
Yeah.
Okay, so do it anyway. And hopefully you won't get canceled and you'll be able to at least speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll try to convert a few people.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned. So I had read that Tom Cotton and Mitt Romney proposing a $10 minimum wage, and it's such a I mean, I'm not surprised that those two gentlemen in particular would do that, but that it says something about party politics, and it's something that I echo as well. That if you're I understand someone that would say, well, I'm going to support the GOP over the LP because they have a better chance to win. But the other side of that coin is that, but if the GOP is just doing all of the exact same policies that I disagree with that say the Democrat Party is, they're just trying to do it in a somewhat more tame way, but they're opening the door to all of these evils that we've discussed, then what good are they as an opposition party?
Well, I have a slightly different view on that. When Hillary was running against Donald, I started with several colleagues of mine, Libertarians for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was that Hillary would be worse than Donald, and I think Biden will be worse than Donald would have been for a second term.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was if you're a libertarian and it's a red state like Louisiana, where Donald doesn't really need your vote, he's going to win easily,
Yeah.
vote for the libertarian. Or if you're in California or Massachusetts, where Donald is going to lose, well, don't vote for Donald anyway. He's going to lose. Vote for the Libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in a purple state like, I don't know, Pennsylvania or maybe Virginia or Wisconsin, which could go either way, then vote for Donald. Don't vote for the Libertarian because, my God, we want the slave master who will beat us once a month better than the one who'll beat us every hour.
Sure.
And Hillary and Joe Biden are going to beat us up every hour, whereas Donald will only beat us up once a week or once a month. So that way we can sort of have our cake and eat it. We can promote liberty, and yet we don't want to have a suicide pact here. And Hillary and Joe Biden are suicidal for the economy. Look, it's really been great.
Mm-hmm.
I promised you a half hour. We're about at the half-hour program, so point in the program. So please invite me again. It's always a pleasure. And I'm sorry I called you a bully. I was just teasing.
No,
you.
that's perfectly fine. That's that. I mean, I enjoy guests that are willing to berate me live on national television. Walter, let us get you out of here on this one. The last time you were here, okay, I asked you if a hot dog was a sandwich. We've evolved beyond such mere questions. Is cereal, which would be a bowl of cereal with the milk poured in, is cereal soup?
Let me answer it in this way.
Okay.
If there are any young people in high school that are thinking of going to college, come study with me at Loyola University, and we'll give you a lot of soup, and we'll give you a lot of breakfast cereal, and also we'll give you a lot of free enterprise. Not just me, but I have several colleagues who are all Austro-libertarians. So if you're thinking of that, or if you have children or grandchildren that are about to go to college, or if they're in a college and they don't much like it because all their professors are pinkos, come to Loyola University New Orleans, and we'll give you a lot of soup.
On that note, guys, I hereby rename Walter Block the Wiggler, and that is what he'll be henceforth known on this program. Walter, thank you so much for being on the show. We will definitely have you back, hopefully to talk about some other topics that maybe are a little bit more positive outlook than this one. Guys,
thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Guys, we'll be right back after this break. Don't go away. Hi guys, it's Alan here, and I want to take a moment to let you know about one of our supporters who started a new business. Laura Moreau sells 50 different health and wellness all-natural products, from weight loss, supplements, energy enhancers, body toning, longer and stronger hair, and so much more. Do you like coffee? Well, they even have coffee that'll help you drop some pounds. And who doesn't want to drop a few pounds? Go check her out at her online store at lauramoreau.itworks.com today. That's lauramoreau.itworks.com. Like our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AlanMosleyTV. You can follow me on Twitter. It's Twitter at AlanMosleyTV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/AlanMosleyTV. Guys, also remember, I'm now on Odyssey. It's odyssey.com/@AlanMosleyTV. Don't just complain about wanting a fresh, decentralized, free speech platform. Go out and join one. Odyssey.com/@AlanMosleyTV. Sherry, do you have any final thoughts?
I'm gonna go get some soup.
I'm gonna get some Fruit Loop soup. Fruit Loops. Do you like Fruit Loops?
I do.
All right, I like Fruit Loops as well. On that note, you will not be physically removed from our anarchist commune, but you guys won't be either. As long as you rejoin us next week. Guys, thank you so much, and we will see you next week.